The scrapyard smelled like burnt metal and disappointment. Owen Harper wiped grease from his hands onto his already filthy work pants as he examined the wreckage of what had once been a diplomatic transport. The vessel had crashed 3 days ago on the outskirts of Meridian 7, and now it sat in pieces, waiting to be stripped for parts. Nobody cared much about diplomatic incidents anymore. The Rationalist Council had made sure of that. Emotions were illegal here. Love, friendship, attachment of any kind. All forbidden. All considered weaknesses that made humanity vulnerable in a galaxy full of stronger species. Owen had lived his whole life under these rules. 32 years of mandatory clarity treatments that suppressed every feeling, every connection, every moment of joy or sadness. He worked, he ate, he slept, he existed. Nothing more. But lately something felt wrong. Empty. Like a hole had been carved into his chest and nothing could fill it. He climbed into the transport's cargo bay, his magnetic boots clanking against the twisted hull. The crash had torn the ship nearly in half, exposing compartments that should have remained sealed. Most of the cargo was ruined. Medical supplies scattered like broken promises. Data cores cracked beyond repair. Standard diplomatic waste. Then he saw it. Hidden behind a collapsed bulkhead wedged into a corner as if someone had tried desperately to protect it, sat a pod. It was roughly the size of a fuel barrel, smooth and organic-looking, with patterns of light pulsing beneath its surface. Bioluminescent veins traced across the shell in colors Owen had no names for. The pod was warm. He could feel heat radiating from it even through his work gloves. Owen knew the rules. Unknown biological material had to be reported immediately to the Council. It would be studied, cataloged, probably destroyed. That was protocol. That was safe. That was rational. His hand touched the pod's surface. The warmth spread up his arm like liquid comfort. The pulsing light synchronized with his heartbeat. Something inside moved, gentle and alive, responding to his presence. Owen looked around the empty cargo bay. No witnesses. No surveillance this far into the scrapyard. The Council's drones did not waste power monitoring garbage. He made a decision that would change everything. 3 hours later, Owen's basement workshop hummed with jury-rigged equipment. He had smuggled the pod home wrapped in thermal blankets hidden inside a crate labeled as spare engine parts. Nobody questioned a mechanic carrying mechanical components. His apartment was standard issue. Gray walls, efficient furniture. A single window that looked out onto more gray buildings, but the basement was his. The Council had granted him this space because of his technical skills. They needed him to repair alien ships, to understand non-human technology. They just never imagined he might use that knowledge for something they had not approved. Owen set up environmental monitors around the pod. Temperature, humidity, atmospheric composition. He cross-referenced the readings with every xenobiology database he could access through the restricted networks. Most of it was useless. But one file, buried deep in ancient records, mentioned something about draconid incubation pods. Dragons. The pod contained a dragon. Owen should have been terrified. Dragons were intelligent, powerful, and, according to every human military assessment, potentially dangerous. The Draconid Empire controlled vast territories on the far side of the galaxy. Humans had barely established diplomatic relations with them, but Owen was not afraid. He was fascinated. For 3 days he monitored the pod. He adjusted temperature settings. He modified the atmospheric mixture to match the specifications he had found. He barely slept. Food became an afterthought. For the first time in his memory, Owen felt something other than emptiness. He felt purpose. On the 3rd night, the pod began to crack. Owen sat cross-legged on the cold basement floor, watching as fracture lines spread across the shell. Light spilled through the gaps, brighter now, pulsing faster. Something pressed against the interior, pushing outward with increasing strength. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, the pod split open. Steam rolled across the floor. The smell of ozone and something organic, something alive, filled the air. Owen leaned forward, his heart pounding in a way the clarity treatments should have prevented. A small head emerged first. Silver-blue scales caught the light, reflecting it in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Oversized wings, translucent and delicate, unfolded slowly. 4 legs, each ending in tiny claws, scrambled for purchase. And eyes. Amber eyes that locked onto Owen with an intelligence that was unmistakable. The dragon was no larger than a house cat, She chirped, a sound that was part bird, part something entirely alien. Then she moved, crawling out of the remains of her pod, and walked directly to Owen. She pressed her scaled head against his outstretched hand. The moment they touched, something happened. A connection formed, instant and undeniable. Owen felt her emotions flood through him. Curiosity, confusion, hunger, trust, and beneath it all, a warmth that had nothing to do with her internal temperature. She was not just intelligent. She was aware. She was a person. Owen felt tears on his face. He had not cried since childhood, before the treatments had begun. He did not even remember what crying felt like. But now, touching this small creature, feeling her trust and her need, the tears came freely. "Hello," he whispered. His voice cracked. "I'm Owen. I'm going to take care of you." The dragon chirped again, nuzzling deeper into his palm. Through the connection he could not explain, Owen felt her response. Not words, but meaning, gratitude, acceptance, bond. He needed a name for her. Something that felt right. He looked at the scattered equipment around his workshop, at the astronomical charts he had printed from old databases, at the ancient star maps that had survived from Earth's early space exploration. "Lyra," he said. "I'll call you Lyra." She rumbled, a sound that vibrated through her whole body and into his hand. Approval. Owen spent the rest of the night feeding her. She ate synthesized proteins from his emergency rations, drank purified water, and explored every corner of the basement with boundless energy. He watched her, amazed by every movement, every curious tilt of her head, every small sound she made. For the first time in his adult life, Owen Harper felt complete. He did not think about the consequences. He did not consider what the council would do if they discovered Lyra. He did not worry about the mandatory treatments he was scheduled to receive, treatments that would reveal the emotional changes happening inside him. All that mattered was the small dragon curled up against his chest, her breathing steady and trusting, their hearts beating in sync through a bond that should not exist. Owen had broken the law. He had harbored an illegal life form. He had formed an attachment, and he would do it again without hesitation. 2 weeks passed in secret. Lyra grew rapidly, already reaching the size of a large dog. Her intelligence became more apparent daily. She understood when Owen needed quiet to think. She stayed hidden when footsteps sounded overhead. She learned to communicate through their empathic bond, sending images and feelings that Owen interpreted with growing accuracy. But the outside world was not patient. A message arrived on Owen's communication terminal. Official council seal. Mandatory notification. Citizen Harper, your Clarity treatment attendance has been flagged as irregular. You are scheduled for a compliance evaluation in 3 days. Failure to attend will result in immediate intervention. Your mental health is the council's priority. Owen read the message 3 times. His hands shook. Not from fear of the treatments, but from fear of what they would reveal. The bond with Lyra had changed his brain chemistry. The evaluators would detect elevated emotional markers immediately. They would know he had formed an attachment, and they would take her away. Lyra pressed against his leg, sensing his distress through their connection. She looked up at him with those amber eyes, and Owen felt her question. "What is wrong?" He knelt down, wrapping his arms around her growing form. "They know something is different," he said quietly. "They're going to test me, and when they do, they'll find out about you." Lyra rumbled, not with fear, but with determination. Through their bond, Owen felt her resolve. She would hide. She would stay silent. She would do whatever necessary to remain with him. "No," Owen said firmly. "If it comes to that, I won't let them take you. I won't let them hurt you. I promise," he meant it. Even if it meant becoming a criminal. Even if it meant losing everything else. Lyra was worth it. Because for the first time in his life, Owen Harper knew what it meant to love something more than himself. And he would protect that love, no matter what the council's laws demanded. The compliance evaluation loomed 3 days away. Owen had that much time to prepare, that much time to decide how far he was willing to go. He looked at Lyra, at the trust in her eyes, at the bond that connected them deeper than any words could express. "We'll figure this out," he promised her. "Together." Lyra chirped softly, pressing her head against his chest directly over his heart, and Owen Harper, mechanic and secret criminal, held his dragon close and prepared for the fight that was coming. 2 months had changed everything. Lyra now stood as tall as Owen's waist, her silver-blue scales gleaming with health and strength. Her wings had developed enough that she could glide short distances across the basement, landing with increasing grace. But it was the bond between them that had grown most dramatically. Owen could feel her emotions now like they were his own. When she was hungry, his stomach echoed the sensation. When she was content, warmth spread through his chest. When she was curious about something, his mind filled with questions he had never thought to ask. It was as if they shared one heart between two bodies. The basement had transformed into a sanctuary. Owen had installed climate controls scavenged from broken environmental systems. Sound dampeners lined the walls, stolen bit by bit from the shipyard where he worked. He had even created a ventilation system that filtered Lyra's heat signature, making her invisible to thermal scanners. Every precaution mattered. The Council's surveillance had intensified across Meridian 7. Enforcement drones patrolled more frequently. Random apartment inspections had tripled. The official explanation was increased security, but Owen knew better. They were hunting for something. Or someone. The compliance evaluation had gone worse than expected. Owen sat in the sterile medical facility, electrodes attached to his temples, while evaluators studied screens filled with data about his brain activity. The lead evaluator, a thin woman with dead eyes named Dr. Patricia Wells, had frowned at the readings. "Your emotional markers are significantly elevated," she had said, her voice flat and clinical. "Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, all well above acceptable ranges for someone on your treatment schedule." Owen had forced himself to remain calm. "I've been under stress at work. Complex repair jobs, long hours." Dr. Wells had not looked convinced. "Stress hormones present differently. These readings suggest bonding behavior. Have you formed any unauthorized attachments, Citizen Harper? Relationships? Friendships? Perhaps you've acquired a pet." The word pet had made Owen's blood run cold, but he maintained his expression, keeping his voice level. "No, doctor. I work alone. I live alone. Perhaps the treatments are losing effectiveness. I could volunteer for additional sessions." That had been the right thing to say. The Council loved volunteers. It suggested compliance, dedication to their vision of rational humanity. Dr. Wells had studied him for a long moment before nodding. "We'll schedule you for enhanced treatments, twice weekly instead of monthly, and we're assigning you a monitoring officer. Officer Diane Reed will conduct random welfare checks. For your own good, of course." Owen had thanked her and left, but he knew the truth. He was being watched now, every move monitored, every action scrutinized. Officer Reed had appeared at his apartment the very next day. She was younger than Owen expected, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back severely, and eyes that missed nothing. She wore the standard gray uniform of the Council's Enforcement Division, with a neural disruptor holstered at her hip. "Citizen Harper," she had said, stepping inside without waiting for invitation. "Random welfare check. This will take approximately 15 minutes." Owen had watched her move through his apartment with systematic efficiency. She checked his food supplies, his work equipment, his personal terminal. She scanned for unauthorized communications, illegal substances, hidden compartments, all while Lyra hid 2 floors below, pressed against the far wall of the basement, their bond stretched thin but holding. Owen could feel her fear, her confusion about why she had to hide. He sent back reassurance, love, promises of safety. "Your living space is exceptionally clean," Officer Reed had observed. "Almost too clean. People who hide things often overcompensate." "I'm a mechanic," Owen had replied. "Organization is part of my training." She had studied him then, really looked at him, and Owen had seen something flicker in her eyes. Not quite suspicion, something else. Recognition, perhaps, as if she saw in him something she once knew in herself. "Your heart rate is elevated," she had noted, glancing at a handheld scanner. "Why are you nervous, Citizen Harper?" "I'm not used to enforcement officers in my home." "Get used to it. I'll be back, frequently." She had paused at the door. "Whatever you're hiding, I will find it. Attachment is weakness. Weakness must be corrected." After she left, Owen had rushed to the basement. Lyra had leaped at him, wings flared, pressing her head against his chest. Through their bond, he felt her terror at separation, her need for reassurance that he had not abandoned her. "Never," he had whispered fiercely, holding her close. "I will never leave you. I promise." But promises were becoming harder to keep. Owen's neighbor, old Mr. Horace Tan, had started watching him with increasing suspicion. Horace was a retired enforcement officer, one of the original implementers of the emotional prohibition laws. He still believed in the council's vision with religious fervor. One evening, Horace had cornered Owen in the hallway. The old man's face was lined with years of enforced rationality, but his eyes were sharp. "You've changed, young man," Horace had said without preamble. "I've lived in this building for 30 years. I know the patterns. You're displaying emotional irregularity. I don't know what you mean. Your schedule has become erratic. You smile sometimes when you think nobody's watching. I've heard sounds from your apartment. Strange sounds. And your eyes?" Horace had leaned closer. "Your eyes look alive." "That's dangerous." Owen had kept his expression neutral. "Thank you for your concern. I'll mention it at my next treatment." "See that you do. I served the council for 40 years. I know what emotional contamination looks like. If you've formed some kind of attachment, you need to report yourself before it destroys you." The threat was clear. Horace was watching, waiting. One mistake and he would report Owen immediately. That night, Owen had researched everything he could find about dragons. Using his technical clearances, he accessed restricted databases, diplomatic files, xenobiology reports that the council kept hidden from general population. What he learned changed everything. Lyra was not just any dragon. She was a princess of the Draconid Empire. The crashed diplomatic vessel had been carrying her as part of a peace delegation, an attempt to establish formal relations between dragons and humans. But something had gone wrong. The ship had crashed. The adult dragons aboard had died. Only Lyra's pod had survived. The Draconids had been searching for her, but diplomatic protocols prevented them from conducting open searches in human space. They had filed formal inquiries with the council, which had been ignored or deflected. Meanwhile, the council had been conducting its own secret search, hoping to find Lyra first and use her as leverage in negotiations with the Draconid Empire. Owen was not just hiding a dragon. He was caught in the middle of an interstellar incident. Through their bond, Owen shared this knowledge with Lyra. She responded with images, feelings, fragments of memory from before her pod had sealed. He saw her homeworld, vast mountain ranges where dragons flew in coordinated formations. He felt the love of her parents, ancient beings who had ruled for millennia. He understood their grief at losing her. But he also felt Lyra's response to all of this. She was sad for her parents. She missed her home. But she did not want to leave Owen. The bond they had formed meant something to her. Meant everything. Dragons bonded for life. Owen had not known that when he first touched her pod. But now the connection was permanent. Lyra would never be truly happy without him. And Owen knew he would never be whole without her. They were stuck together. Bound by something deeper than law or logic, the enhanced treatments began. Twice a week, Owen sat in the medical facility while chemicals were pumped into his bloodstream, designed to suppress emotional responses. But they were not working properly. The bond with Lyra had fundamentally altered his brain chemistry. His neural pathways had reorganized around their connection. The treatments made him sick, dizzy, disoriented. But they did not break the bond, Dr. Wells noticed. "Your resistance to treatment is highly unusual. We may need to escalate to neural reconditioning." Neural reconditioning meant having his recent memories erased, his emotional capacity permanently damaged. Owen would lose everything he had shared with Lyra. He would become a blank slate, rational and empty. He could not let that happen. Officer Reed's visits increased in frequency. She came every 3 days now, sometimes twice a day, always unannounced, always searching. One visit, she had stood directly above the basement door. Owen's heart had nearly stopped. Below, Lyra remained motionless, barely breathing. Their bond stretched to its absolute limit. Reed had noticed his reaction. "Your biosigns just spiked dramatically." "Why? You startled me. I wasn't expecting you so soon after the last visit." She had stared at him for a long moment. Then she had looked down at the basement door. Her hand had moved toward the handle. "That's just storage," Owen had said quickly. "Old mechanical parts. Nothing interesting. Then you won't mind if I look." Owen's mind had raced. If she opened that door, everything would end. She would find Lyra. She would call for backup. They would take his dragon away, probably kill her as an unauthorized alien presence. Owen would be arrested, reconditioned, erased. Actually, Owen had said quietly, making a decision, I do mind. This is my home. I have rights to privacy in my designated personal space. Unless you have a specific warrant for search beyond the living areas, you're violating Council Code 447B. Reed had blinked, surprised. Few citizens ever invoked their rights. You're hiding something. I'm asserting my legal protections. If you believe there's cause for expanded search, file for a warrant. Otherwise, please leave. She had stared at him, and in that moment Owen had seen something shift in her expression. Not anger. Something else. Respect, maybe. Or curiosity about why someone would take such a risk. This isn't over, she had said finally. Whatever you're hiding, it will destroy you. Attachment always does. After she left, Owen had collapsed against the basement door. Below, Lyra had called to him through their bond, desperate and afraid. He had gone down to her immediately, and she had wrapped her growing body around him, wings enclosing them both. They stayed like that for hours, drawing strength from each other, knowing that time was running out. I won't let them take you, Owen had promised again. No matter what happens. You're mine and I'm yours. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever known. Through their bond, Lyra had sent back pure love, absolute trust, and unwavering loyalty. Owen Harper was becoming a criminal. The council was closing in. Officer Reed was suspicious. Horace was watching. The treatments were failing. Everything was falling apart. But holding Lyra, feeling their hearts beat together, Owen knew he had made the right choice. Some things were worth becoming a criminal for. Some bonds were worth any price. And if the council wanted to take that away from him, they would have to go through him first. Everything fell apart on a Tuesday morning at exactly 7:32. Owen was at the shipyard, hands deep in the engine core of a mining vessel, when his personal terminal buzzed with an emergency alert. He pulled it out with greasy fingers and felt his world stop. Neural implant malfunction detected, citizen. Harper flagged for immediate medical intervention. Enforcement. Team dispatched to your residence remain. Com compliance is safety, his neural implant. Every citizen of Meridian 7 had one installed at birth. It monitored health, tracked location, and in theory, helped regulate emotional responses. Owen's implant had been malfunctioning for weeks, damaged by the intense emotional changes the bond with Lyra had caused. He had hoped it would go unnoticed. He had been wrong. Owen ran. He pushed past confused coworkers, ignoring their questions. His hands shook as he activated his communicator, switching to the encrypted channel he had set up months ago. It was designed to look like equipment diagnostics to any scanner, but it connected directly to his apartment's security system. The cameras showed exactly what he feared. 3 enforcement vehicles parked outside his building, 6 officers in full tactical gear entering through the main doors. Officer Reed leading them, her expression cold and determined. They were going to his apartment. They were going to find Lyra. Owen's heart hammered against his ribs. Lyra was hiding in the basement, but how long would that protection last against thermal scanners, seismic sensors, and officers trained to find what people tried to hide? His terminal buzzed again, this time a different frequency, one he did not recognize. Harper, if you can hear this, listen carefully. The voice was female, young, urgent. This is Ruth Park from Bay 7. I've been watching you for months. I know you're hiding something important. The enforcement team just entered your building. You have maybe 5 minutes before they breach your basement. There's a maintenance tunnel entrance in the east corner of Bay 12. Get to your apartment. Get whatever you're hiding, run. Owen did not know Ruth Park, did not know why she was helping, but he did not have time for questions. He sprinted across the shipyard toward his apartment building, taking shortcuts through maintenance corridors and cargo bays that most workers did not know existed. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. But he pushed harder. Through his bond with Lyra, he felt her confusion turning to fear. She sensed his panic, felt the danger approaching. He sent back one desperate message, hide, stay silent. I'm coming. Owen reached his building through a back entrance that maintenance crews used. He took the stairs 4 at a time, his work boots pounding against metal. Above, he heard voices, orders being shouted, the distinctive whine of enforcement equipment powering up. He burst into his apartment just as the officers reached his floor. No time for subtle. No time for planning. Owen ran to the basement door and yanked it open. "Lyra, now!" She appeared in a rush of silver-blue scales in desperate relief. She had grown so large now, nearly the size of a small transport vehicle. Her wings scraped the walls as she scrambled up the stairs toward him. Behind them, Owen heard his apartment door explode inward. Shouts of "Clear!" and "Search every room." "The basement." Officer Reed's voice cut through the chaos. "Check the basement." Owen grabbed Lyra's neck, their bond flaring with shared adrenaline. He guided her toward the small window that led to the fire escape. Too small for her now. But they had no choice, Lyra understood. She lowered her head and smashed through the wall beside the window, creating an opening large enough for her body. Reinforced materials crumbled under Dragon's strength. Alarms shrieked. The entire building shook. "Suspect is fleeing." Someone screamed. "All units converge." Owen and Lyra tumbled through the opening onto the fire escape. 3 stories up. Enforcement officers were already climbing up from below. More were on the roof above. "Jump!" Owen shouted. Lyra spread her wings. They were not strong enough for true flight yet, but they could glide. Owen threw himself onto her back, fingers gripping the ridges of her scales. She leaped. They fell. The ground rushed up at them. Lyra's wings caught air at the last moment, and they glided across the narrow street between buildings. She landed hard, claws scraping concrete, wings folding tight against her body. Behind them, enforcement officers opened fire. Neural disruptors whined through the air. One bolt hit the ground inches from Lyra's feet, leaving a circle of scorched pavement. Lyra ran. Her powerful legs propelled them forward at speeds Owen had never imagined. Buildings blurred past. Citizens scattered, screaming. Some pointed. Some recorded on their personal devices. Some just stared in shock at the impossible sight of a dragon running through their orderly city. "All units, this is Reed." Officer Reed's voice came through public speakers. "Suspect is Owen Harper, accompanied by unauthorized alien entity. Both are to be contained immediately. Use of force is authorized." More enforcement vehicles appeared. Drones descended from above, their scanners locked on Lyra's heat signature. The city's defensive systems activated, designed to contain threats without destroying infrastructure. Owen directed Lyra through his bond, showing her paths through the streets, shortcuts he knew from years of walking to work. They turned into an alley. Too narrow. Lyra's shoulders scraped both walls, but she pushed through. They emerged into an abandoned industrial sector. Old factories loomed around them, their windows broken, their machinery silent. This area had been shut down years ago, when the council decided manufacturing should be centralized. Now it was a ghost town of rusted metal and forgotten equipment. Perfect for hiding. Lyra ducked into a massive warehouse, its doors hanging open like broken teeth. Inside, darkness swallowed them. Owen slipped off her back, legs shaking from adrenaline. He could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. "We need to keep moving," he whispered. "They'll have thermal scanners, heat signature detectors." Through their bond, Lyra sent back understanding mixed with fear. Not fear of the officers. Fear of separation. Fear that Owen would be hurt trying to protect her. "I'm not leaving you," Owen said firmly. "Never." His terminal buzzed again. The same encrypted channel from before. "Harper, this is Ruth again. I'm monitoring enforcement frequencies. They're setting up a perimeter around the industrial sector. You're trapped, but there's a way out. Underground maintenance tunnels run beneath the entire city. There's an access point in your location, northwest corner, behind the old smelting equipment. It'll be marked with a red valve." "Who are you?" Owen asked quietly. "Why are you helping?" "Because I've been where you are. Because I lost someone to the council's laws. Because what you're doing is brave and stupid and necessary. Now move. You have maybe 2 minutes before they breach your position." Owen found the access point exactly where Ruth said it would be. A heavy metal hatch with a wheel lock marked with faded red paint. He spun the wheel with desperate strength, feeling old mechanisms grudgingly give way. The hatch opened onto darkness and the smell of stale air. Metal ladder rungs descended into black nothing. "Come on," Owen said to Lyra. She hesitated. The opening was barely large enough for her. She would have to fold her wings tight, squeeze her body through spaces meant for humans. Above, the warehouse doors exploded inward. Flashlights cut through the darkness. "Secure all exits. Fan out, find them." Lyra made her decision. She pushed through the hatch, her scales scraping metal, her wings compressed painfully. Owen followed, pulling the hatch shut above them just as light swept across their hiding spot. They descended into the tunnels. The maintenance system beneath Meridian 7 was older than the emotional prohibition laws. It had been built when the colony was first established, designed to service water, power, and atmospheric processors. Humans and their equipment had walked these tunnels for generations. Now Owen and Lyra ran through them, guided only by Owen's failing terminal light and their desperate need to stay ahead of pursuit. Behind them they heard the hatch open. Voices echoed down the shaft. They went underground. "Get the tactical team down here." Owen ran faster, one hand on Lyra's side to keep them together in the darkness. The tunnels branched and split, a maze of passages that all looked the same. Water dripped from pipes overhead. Their footsteps echoed endlessly. His terminal buzzed. "Ruth again. I'm sending you a map. Follow the highlighted route. It'll take you to the far edge of the industrial sector. There's an old factory there, completely off the grid. You can hide while we figure out the next move." "We?" Owen asked between gasps for air. "You're not alone anymore, Harper. There are others who question the Council. Others who think maybe emotions aren't weakness. You just became their symbol." Owen followed the map through twisting passages. Behind them, pursuit grew closer. He could hear boots on metal, orders being shouted, the whine of equipment being deployed. At one junction, Lyra stopped suddenly. Through their bond, Owen felt her decision a moment before she acted. She turned to face the tunnel behind them. "No," Owen said urgently. "We run together." But Lyra had already made up her mind. She drew in a deep breath, and Owen felt fire building in her chest. She had never used her fire breath before, had never needed to. The pursuing officers rounded the corner just as Lyra exhaled. Flames roared through the tunnel, not hot enough to kill, but more than enough to force the officers back. Metal glowed red. The air filled with smoke and the smell of scorched equipment. "Move, fall back!" someone screamed. Lyra turned and ran, Owen keeping pace beside her. The fire had bought them precious seconds. They emerged from the tunnels in the abandoned factory district, exactly where Ruth's map had indicated. A derelict building loomed before them, its structure intact but its interior long since stripped of anything valuable. Owen and Lyra pushed through a broken door and collapsed inside. They pressed close together, hearts pounding in sync, lungs burning from exertion. Through the bond, they shared exhaustion and fear and determination. They had escaped for now. Owen's terminal displayed a final message from Ruth. "Stay quiet. Stay hidden. I'll contact you soon with next steps. You're all over the news now. Dangerous mechanic and alien beast terrorize city. But I'm uploading something else too. The truth. People deserve to know what you're really running from." Owen pulled Lyra close, feeling her warm scales against his skin. Outside, sirens wailed. Drones searched the skies. Enforcement teams spread through the district. They were criminals now, fugitives, hunted, but they were together. And somehow that made everything else bearable. "We'll figure this out," Owen whispered to Lyra, just as he had months ago. "Together." She rumbled softly, pressing her head against his chest. And in that broken factory, surrounded by enemies with no clear path forward, Owen Harper felt something impossible. He felt hope. 3 days in the ruins changed Owen in ways he had not expected. Not physically, though his body ached from sleeping on concrete and living on synthesized ration bars he had stashed in various locations months ago. The change was deeper, fundamental. He had learned to see through Lyra's eyes. The first time it happened, Owen thought he was hallucinating from stress. He blinked and suddenly saw himself from outside his own body, crouched beside a broken window, his face gaunt and tired. Then he blinked again and was back in his own perspective. Lyra had chirped softly, and through their bond he felt her surprise. She had experienced the same thing. For a brief moment they had literally shared vision. The bond was growing stronger, adapting, evolving beyond what either of them had imagined possible. They spent their days hiding in the abandoned factory, moving between rooms whenever drones passed overhead. Owen used his mechanical skills to survive. He built a water filtration system from old pipes. He created a heat signature disperser that made Lyra invisible to thermal scanners. He even jury-rigged a communication intercept that let him monitor enforcement frequencies. What he heard both terrified and amazed him. The city was divided. Official channels broadcast a clear message. Owen Harper was mentally compromised, dangerous, controlled by an alien predator that threatened public safety. The dragon must be contained. The mechanic must be saved from himself through neural reconditioning. But unauthorized channels told a different story. Ruth had been busy. She had leaked footage of Owen and Lyra's bond. Not the violent chase, but earlier recordings from Owen's apartment security system. Moments of quiet connection. Lyra learning to communicate. Owen teaching her about human culture. Their obvious care for each other. She had uploaded testimonies from other citizens who had secretly been skipping their clarity treatments. People who whispered about feeling empty, hollow, like something essential was missing from their lives. She had even found old records from before the emotional prohibition laws, showing humanity's history of bonds with animals, with each other, with anything that brought meaning to existence. The message spread through underground networks faster than the council could suppress it. And people began to talk, to question, to wonder if maybe the laws they had lived under for decades were wrong. Graffiti appeared on walls throughout Meridian 7. Simple messages that enforcement officers scrubbed away every morning, only to have them reappear every night. Bonds are strength. The mechanic who dared to love. Question the council. Feel again. Owen watched these developments through his intercepted feeds, amazed and humbled. He had not meant to start a movement. He had just wanted to protect Lyra. But somehow his choice had become a symbol for everyone who had ever wondered if there was more to life than empty efficiency. Not everyone supported him. The official broadcast showed that clearly citizens called in to enforcement hotlines, reporting anyone who spoke favorably about Owen. Neighbors turned against neighbors. Families divided over whether emotions should be allowed or eliminated. Some saw Owen as a hero. Others saw him as a disease vector, spreading dangerous emotional contamination that would weaken all of humanity. The council held emergency sessions. Chairman Victor Cross appeared on every screen, his face a mask of stern authority. This mechanic has been compromised by an alien entity. The creature he harbors uses empathic manipulation to control his thoughts. This is not love. This is parasitism. We must find them both before the infection spreads. But his words rang hollow to those who had seen Ruth's leaked footage. Owen's face in those recordings showed no signs of control or manipulation. It showed joy, wonder, connection, things the council claimed did not exist. On the fourth day of hiding, Owen's terminal buzzed with a new encrypted message. Not Ruth this time. The signature was different. Mr. Harper, my name is Ruth Park. We have not met in person, but I have been helping coordinate your escape. It is time we met. I have information you need to hear. Tonight, coordinates attached. Come alone. Or as alone as you can be with a dragon. The coordinates led to an abandoned residential block on the edge of the industrial sector. Owen studied them carefully, looking for any sign of a trap. But the location made sense. Close enough to reach safely. Far enough from active enforcement patrols. What do you think? He asked Lyra quietly. She sent back cautious curiosity. She had heard Ruth's voice through the terminal speaker. The voice felt honest to her empathic senses, but she was also protective of Owen, worried about any risk he might take. We need allies, Owen said. We can't hide forever. That evening, Owen and Lyra moved through the shadows toward the meeting point. The city had changed since their escape. More drones patrolled. More cameras watched. But there were also more blind spots. Places where someone had disabled surveillance or scrambled signals. Someone was helping them. Multiple someones, probably. The residential block was eerily silent. Windows gaped empty. Doors hung open. When the council had centralized housing, they had simply abandoned these older neighborhoods, leaving them to decay. Owen found the specific building from the coordinates. 3rd floor, apartment 7. He climbed the stairs quietly, Lyra following with surprising stealth for her size. She had learned to move silently, to compress her body through tight spaces to be more than just a dragon. She had become a survivor. The apartment door was open. Light spilled through from inside. Owen entered cautiously, one hand on Lyra's neck for reassurance. A young woman stood by the window, watching the street below. She turned as they entered, and Owen saw intelligence in her eyes along with deep sadness. Ruth, he said. Owen, she replied, and you must be Lyra. I have heard much about you both. Ruth was maybe 25, with short dark hair and the efficient clothes of a shipyard worker. But there was something in the way she held herself, Tension, pain barely contained. "Why are you helping us?" Owen asked. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she walked to a small table and picked up a photograph. She held it out to Owen. The image showed Ruth with another young man. They stood close together, smiling in a way that people did not smile anymore. Happy. Connected. "His name was David," Ruth said softly. "My brother. He was 23 when the council found out he had formed a bond with another man. Romantic love. Completely forbidden." Owen felt his chest tighten. "What happened?" "They separated them, forced David into neural reconditioning, but the bond was too strong. The procedure damaged his brain. He died 3 days later from neural trauma." Ruth's voice was steady, but Owen could see tears on her face. "The council called it a necessary intervention, said he would have recovered if he had been stronger, blamed him for his own death." "I'm sorry," Owen said, the words feeling inadequate. "I have been skipping treatment since then, planning, watching for someone else who was brave enough to fight back. Then I noticed you, the way you moved, the way your eyes changed. I knew you had found something the council could not take away." Ruth gestured to the window. Outside, the city sprawled in its gray efficiency. "You have given people hope, Owen. Not just rebels like me. Normal citizens who wonder if this is really all there is to life. They see you protecting Lyra, risking everything for her, and they remember what it means to care about something." "The council will kill us if they catch us," Owen said. "Maybe, but you have changed the conversation. People are questioning now. Openly. The council cannot just make this go away." Ruth pulled out a datapad and handed it to Owen. "This contains access codes to the Resistance Network. 23 people across the city who are willing to help. Safe houses, supply caches, communication channels that enforcement cannot trace." Owen stared at the pad. 23 people. He had thought he was alone. But there were others. "There is something else you need to know," Ruth continued. "The Draconid Empire has made a formal demand to the council. They know Lyra's here. They want her returned safely." Through his bond with Lyra, Owen felt her complex emotions. Longing for her parents, fear of leaving Owen, confusion about where she truly belonged. "Ambassador Kale arrived in orbit 2 days ago," Ruth explained. "He made a public statement that bypassed council sensors. It has been playing on underground channels continuously." Ruth activated a holographic display. A massive dragon appeared, ancient and powerful, his scales dark as night with patterns of stars. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that made Owen's bones vibrate. "People of Meridian 7, I am Ambassador Kale of the Draconid Empire. We seek our princess Lyra, who was lost in a diplomatic accident. But we have learned something remarkable. A human has sheltered her, protected her, formed a sacred bond with her." The ambassador paused, his eyes seeming to look directly through the display at everyone watching. "Your leaders call this weakness. They say emotions make you vulnerable. But we dragons have studied humanity for centuries. We know your history, your art, your music, your capacity for love. These things do not weaken you. They are your greatest strength. The mechanic who harbors our princess has shown more honor than your council. He has demonstrated courage, compassion, and loyalty. These are not flaws to be corrected. These are virtues to be celebrated. We offer Owen Harper and Princess Lyra sanctuary aboard our ships. We also offer the people of Meridian 7 a choice. Continue living as you are, efficient and empty, or remember what makes life worth living." The message ended. Owen stood in silence, processing what he had just heard. "The council is furious," Ruth said. "They tried to jam the transmission. Failed. Tried to discredit it. Failed. Ambassador Kale is a legend among the galactic community. His word carries weight that the council cannot ignore." "What do they want me to do?" Owen asked. "They want to meet you, to verify that Lyra is safe and healthy, to offer you both protection from the council." Owen looked at Lyra. Through their bond, he felt her desire for him to be safe, her willingness to go with the Draconids if it meant protecting him. "No," Owen said firmly to her through their connection. "We decide together, always." Ruth watched this silent communication with fascination. "The bond is real. I can see it. The way you respond to each other without words." "It is real," Owen confirmed. "More real than anything the council has ever told me." His terminal buzzed. Multiple alerts. Ruth's too. They both looked down at the same message appearing on every screen in the city. Emergency broadcast. Enforcement teams have located the fugitives. All citizens must remain in their homes. The threat will be neutralized within the hour. They found us, Ruth said urgently. Someone must have tracked your terminal signal. Through the window, Owen saw lights approaching. Vehicles, drones, dozens of them. But he also saw something else. Citizens leaving their apartments. Dozens, then hundreds. They were not running from the threat. They were walking toward it. What are they doing? Owen whispered. Ruth smiled, though her eyes were wet. They are making a choice. They are standing with you. The citizens of Meridian 7 formed a human wall between the enforcement teams and the building where Owen hid. They did not carry weapons. They just stood silent and defiant. Officer Diane Reed's voice echoed through loudspeakers. Disperse immediately. You are interfering with council business. Return to your homes, but nobody moved. More people arrived. Old and young. Workers and managers. People who had lived their entire lives under the Prohibition laws. They stood together. And for the first time in decades, they held hands. Owen watched from the window. Lyra pressed against his side and realized something profound. He was not just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for all of them. For everyone who had ever wondered if there was more to life than efficiency. For everyone who had lost someone to the council's laws. For everyone who wanted to feel again. The legend was growing. And Owen Harper, simple mechanic, found himself at the center of something far larger than he had ever imagined. Owen had never imagined speaking to thousands of people. He was a mechanic. He fixed engines and solved technical problems. Public speaking was not part of his skill set. But sometimes history did not care about your qualifications. The resistance had moved quickly after the citizen standoff. They had smuggled Owen and Lyra to a new location. An old communications hub in the industrial sector that had been abandoned when the council centralized all broadcasts. The equipment was outdated but functional, and more importantly, Ruth and her network knew how to hack into Meridian 7's communication grid. We get one shot at this, Ruth explained as she worked on the technical setup. The council will locate the signal source within minutes of broadcast start. We need to say everything that matters before they shut us down or send enforcement. Owen stood in front of makeshift recording equipment, feeling inadequate for the moment. Lyra rested beside him, her massive form now fully visible in the camera's frame. She had grown so large over these months, strong and powerful, capable of incredible destruction if she chose. But when she looked at Owen, her eyes held only gentleness. What do I even say? Owen asked quietly. Ruth paused her work and looked at him. Tell them the truth. Tell them your story. Let them see what the council has been hiding. A young man named David Grant entered the room. He was maybe 20, wearing an enforcement uniform that he had stripped of its council insignia. I was one of the officers who chased you through the tunnels, David said directly. I was supposed to capture you, contain the threat. But when I saw you protecting Lyra, when I felt what I felt watching you two together. He paused, struggling with words. I realized I had been lied to my entire life. Emotions are not weakness. They are what makes us human. David handed Owen a data chip. These are testimonies from other officers who feel the same way. From citizens who remember life before the Prohibition laws. From people who have lost loved ones to the council's reconditioning. You are not alone, Owen. You never were. Owen took the chip, feeling its weight. Not physical weight, responsibility. Ruth finished her technical preparations. We are ready. Once we activate the hack, every screen in Meridian 7 will show this broadcast. Offices, homes, public displays. Everyone will see you. Everyone will hear you. Owen's hand shook. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make it worse? Lyra pressed her head against his chest, directly over his heart. Through their bond, she sensed strength, courage, and absolute faith in him. Ruth smiled sadly. You cannot make it worse than it already is. People are hurting. They are empty. They need to see that there is another way to live. Owen took a deep breath. He thought about everything that had led to this moment. Finding Lyra's pod, watching her hatch, forming a bond deeper than anything he had imagined possible, learning what it meant to love something more than his own safety. Do it, he said. Ruth activated the hack. Red lights turned green across her equipment panel. We are live in 3, 2, 1. Owen looked directly into the camera and began to speak. My name is Owen Harper. I am not a terrorist. I am not mentally compromised. I am not controlled by an alien predator. I am simply someone who learned what it means to care. His voice was steady despite his fear. Beside him, Lyra remained calm, her presence anchoring him. 4 months ago, I found something in a crashed ship. An egg, a pod. I knew I should report it. That was the law. That was the safe choice. But something made me hesitate. Something I did not have words for then. Owen paused, gathering his thoughts. Across the city, thousands of people stopped what they were doing to watch. In homes, in workplaces, on street displays. Everyone watching. The pod hatched. Inside was Lyra, a dragon, a child. And the moment we touched, I felt something I had never experienced before. Connection. Real, genuine connection. Not just communication, understanding. He placed his hand on Lyra's neck. Through their bond, he felt her permission to share their story. The council taught us that emotions make us weak, that love, friendship, attachment of any kind make us vulnerable. They said we needed to be rational, efficient, empty of feelings if we wanted to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Owen met the camera directly. They were wrong. I have never been stronger than I am with Lyra beside me. Our bond does not weaken me. It gives me purpose, courage, the strength to face any danger, solve any problem, endure any hardship, because I have something worth protecting. Through the camera feed, Ruth showed Owen the incoming message counts. Thousands of responses already. Most supportive, some angry, all emotional in ways that would have been impossible weeks ago. Let me tell you what I learned from Lyra about the Draconid culture. Dragons bond for life. These connections make them powerful beyond measure. They build civilizations that last millennia. They create art that moves people across star systems. They value bonds above all else, and it makes them strong, not weak. Owen continued, his voice gaining confidence. The council said my bond with Lyra was manufactured, that she was manipulating me, but anyone who has ever truly cared about something knows the difference. You know when feelings are real. You know when connection is genuine. He pulled out the data chip David had given him. I have testimonies here from dozens of people. Officers who refuse to follow orders. Citizens who remember life before the Prohibition laws. People who lost loved ones to forced reconditioning. Owen inserted the chip into the broadcast system. Ruth nodded, integrating the files into the stream. Faces appeared on screens across the city. Real people. Real stories. An elderly woman spoke about her husband, dead from neural trauma after being separated from his bonded partner. A young father talked about never being able to hold his children because physical affection was prohibited. A scientist described the breakthrough discoveries her team made after they stopped taking clarity treatments and allowed themselves to feel curiosity and excitement. Story after story. Pain after pain, but also hope. Always hope. Owen let the testimonies play, then returned to camera. The council will tell you I am dangerous, that Lyra is a threat, that emotions are a disease that must be cured. But I am asking you to look at what is really happening here. I am a mechanic who found a lost child and chose to protect her. I formed a bond that has made my life meaningful for the first time ever. I broke laws that should never have existed, and now I am being hunted for the crime of caring. His voice grew passionate. But you know what? I would do it again. Every single choice, every risk, because Lyra is worth it. This bond is worth it. Living a life with meaning is worth it. Lyra chose that moment to add her own voice to the broadcast. She had been learning to vocalize in ways humans could understand, combining empathic projection with sound. When she spoke, everyone watching felt her message directly in their hearts. Love is real. Love is strength. Love is what makes life beautiful. The effect was immediate and profound. Across the city, people began to cry. Not from sadness, but from recognition, from remembering what they had lost, from feeling something genuine for the first time in years. Owen continued. Ambassador Kale of the Draconid Empire made an offer. Sanctuary for Lyra and me, protection from the council, and he said something important. He called courage and compassion virtues, not flaws. I am not asking you to break your laws. I am asking you to change them. We can be strong and still love. We can be rational and still feel. We do not have to choose between humanity and emotion, because emotion is what makes us human. Red lights began flashing on Ruth's equipment. They have located us. Enforcement teams are 3 minutes out. Owen nodded. He had expected this. I know many of you are afraid. The council has power. They control our lives in so many ways, but they cannot control what you feel. They cannot stop you from questioning. They cannot force you to believe that emptiness is better than connection. I am just one person, one mechanic who made a choice. But if that choice can inspire even one of you to ask whether the prohibition laws are right, then everything I have risked will be worth it. Lyra stood, spreading her wings fully. Even through the camera, her presence was magnificent, powerful but also gentle, a living embodiment of the bond between different species, different ways of being. They are coming to arrest me now, Owen said calmly. They might succeed. They might recondition me, erase my memories, destroy the bond Lyra and I share. But they cannot erase what you have seen today. They cannot undo the questions you are asking yourselves right now. Outside the building, Owen heard vehicles arriving, boots hitting pavement, orders being shouted. Remember this moment, Owen said to the camera, to everyone watching. Remember that a simple mechanic stood up and said emotions matter. Love matters. Connection matters. Remember that there is another way to live. The building's doors exploded inward. Enforcement officers flooded the first floor. Ruth kept the cameras running. They are coming up the stairs. Owen placed both hands on Lyra, feeling their bond flare with intensity. Whatever happens next, know that I do not regret anything. Lyra made my life worth living. This bond is the best thing I have ever known. Lyra rumbled in agreement, her empathic message broadcasting through their connection to everyone still watching. I love him. He is mine, I am his. This is not weakness. This is everything. The stairwell door burst open. Officer Reed entered first, weapon drawn, followed by a dozen tactical officers. But she stopped when she saw Owen standing calmly, Lyra beside him, both of them broadcasting to thousands of people. Officer Reed, Owen said quietly, are you really going to arrest me for loving someone? Reed's weapon trembled. For the first time since Owen had known her, he saw genuine emotion on her face. Conflict, doubt, pain. Your orders are to contain us, Owen continued, to stop this broadcast, to restore order. But look at your hand, Officer Reed, it is shaking. Do you know why? Reed said nothing, but her jaw tightened. Because you feel something right now. Maybe anger. Maybe confusion. Maybe doubt about everything you have been taught. That is what emotions do. They make life complicated, messy, difficult, but also real, also meaningful. Through the broadcast, the entire city watched this confrontation. Thousands of people seeing a moment of genuine human interaction, of conflict and choice and consequence. Reed's weapon lowered slightly. I have my orders. I know, Owen said. And you can follow them. You can arrest me, but you will have to do it in front of everyone watching. You will have to be the person who stops someone from protecting what they love. Can you do that? The tactical officers behind Reed shifted uncomfortably. Several of them were the same ones who had chased Owen through the tunnels. David Grant was among them. He had quietly lowered his weapon entirely. Reed's hand dropped to her side. The weapon clattered to the floor. I cannot do this anymore, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, but the cameras caught it. I have spent years enforcing laws that made people empty. I thought I was protecting humanity, but you are right. I feel something right now, and it is not weakness. She looked directly at Owen and he saw tears on her face. Real tears. Genuine emotion breaking through decades of suppression. What you have with Lyra is beautiful, Reed said, her voice breaking, and I have been trying to destroy it. I am sorry. Owen felt his own tears falling. You do not have to be sorry. You can choose differently now. Reed turned to the tactical officers behind her. Stand down. All of you. We are not arresting anyone today. Several officers immediately lowered their weapons. Others hesitated, looking uncertain. But slowly, one by one, they all chose to disobey their orders. Outside, more enforcement vehicles arrived. Higher-ranking officers who would not be swayed by emotion or doubt. The council itself was responding now, sending their most loyal forces. Through the windows, Owen saw something incredible. The citizens who had formed a human wall before were back. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They surrounded the building, blocking the streets, standing between the council's forces and the broadcast location. They were protecting him. Protecting what he represented. Ruth spoke urgently. Owen, Ambassador Kale's ship is descending. He is offering immediate extraction. But it is your choice. Owen looked at Lyra. Through their bond, they shared a single thought. They had started something here. Something important. They could not run now. Tell the ambassador thank you, Owen said. But we stay. We finish this. He turned back to the camera for his final message. People of Meridian 7, the choice is yours now. The Council wants you afraid, empty, obedient. But you have seen another way. You have felt what you are capable of feeling. Nobody can take that away from you now. Not with laws, not with treatments, not with reconditioning, because you know the truth. Love is real. Bonds are real. Connection is real, and they make us stronger than we ever were alone. Through the windows, Owen saw the Council's forces trying to push through the citizen blockade, but the people would not move. They linked arms. They stood firm. They chose emotions over emptiness. Whatever happens next, Owen concluded, remember that a mechanic and a dragon showed you it was possible to care. Remember that courage is not violence. It is standing up for what matters even when you are afraid. Remember that you are human. And being human means feeling everything. The joy and the pain, the love and the fear. All of it. The broadcast continued as Council Chairman Victor Cross himself appeared on split screens, trying to override Owen's message with his own propaganda. But nobody was listening to him anymore. They were watching Owen hold Lyra close. They were seeing real love, real connection, real bond. And they were remembering what it meant to be alive. The standoff lasted for 3 hours. 3 hours that felt like 3 lifetimes. Outside the communications hub, thousands of citizens maintained their human wall. Inside, Owen stood with Lyra, Officer Reed, and the tactical team that had refused their orders. The broadcast continued, showing everything in real time to everyone in Meridian 7. Chairman Victor Cross appeared on every screen, his face red with fury and desperation. These citizens are being manipulated. The dragon has empathic abilities that compromise rational thought. This is not choice. This is infection. We must act now to save them from themselves. But his words rang hollow. People had seen Owen's broadcast. They had felt Lyra's message. They knew the difference between manipulation and genuine connection. Dr. Helen Wright, senior council member and head of the medical division, appeared beside Cross on the broadcast. Owen had seen her before in council proceedings. She was known for her strict adherence to the prohibition laws, but now she looked troubled, conflicted. Chairman Cross, she said carefully, perhaps we should consider dialogue rather than force. The situation is escalating beyond our control. There will be no dialogue with emotional contamination, Cross snapped. Activate the neural pulse citywide immediately. Owen felt his blood run cold. The neural pulse, a weapon the council had developed years ago for extreme situations. It would send a signal through every neural implant in the city simultaneously, forcing immediate sedation. Then, while everyone was unconscious, mass reconditioning could begin. It was the council's final solution. And Cross was desperate enough to use it. Ruth's equipment began showing alarming readings. He is serious. The pulse generator is powering up. We have maybe 90 seconds, Dr. Wright stood suddenly. No, Victor, this is too far. We created the prohibition laws to protect humanity, not to turn us into prisoners in our own minds. Sit down, Helen, Cross ordered. This is necessary. It is tyranny, Wright replied firmly. I have supported these laws for 30 years, but I cannot support this. I will not help you erase free will. The council chamber descended into chaos as other members began arguing. Some supported Cross, others sided with Wright. The fracture in their authority became visible to everyone watching, but Cross had his finger on the activation switch, and he was not hesitating. For the good of humanity, he said and pressed the button. Owen felt the pulse activate. His neural implant, already damaged from months of emotional bonding, sparked with pain. Around the city, people collapsed as their implants forced sedation. But Lyra had sensed the danger through her bond with Owen. In the split second before the pulse hit, she did something incredible. She created an empathic shield, drawing on every ounce of her strength, on the bond she shared with Owen, on the connections she had formed with every person who had felt her broadcast. Lyra projected a massive wave of protective energy. The neural pulse hit the shield and scattered. Most of its power dissipated, but the effort cost Lyra everything. She collapsed, her massive body hitting the floor with a sound like thunder. The light faded from her eyes. Her breathing slowed to almost nothing. Lyra! Owen screamed. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands on her scales. Through their bond, he felt her life force flickering like a candle in wind. She was dying. The empathic shield had saved thousands of people, but it had burned through Lyra's energy completely. She had given everything to protect those she barely knew. Owen cradled her enormous head in his lap, tears streaming down his face. His grief was raw, visible, broadcast to the entire city. "No, no, no," he whispered desperately. "Lyra, please. Stay with me. Please." Through their fading bond, he felt her last message. "I love you. I would do it again. You taught me that love is real." Something broke in Owen then. Not his body, but something deeper. He felt the bond stretching, thinning, beginning to dissolve as Lyra's life slipped away. And then something extraordinary happened. The citizens who had been partially affected by the neural pulse, whose implants had not completely failed thanks to Lyra's shield, began to feel something. Through the empathic energy she had projected, they could sense the bond between Owen and Lyra. They could feel his grief, her sacrifice, the depth of love between human and dragon. It was something they had never experienced before. Pure, unfiltered emotion, raw and honest and beautiful. Officer Diane Reed was the first to move. She fell to her knees beside Owen, tears streaming down her face. Then David Grant, then other tactical officers, then Ruth. One by one, people began gathering around Lyra's fallen form. Not just those in the building. Outside, citizens pushed forward, drawn by something they could not explain. They wanted to be close. They wanted to help. Through his grief, Owen heard a massive sound. Thunder that was not thunder. He looked up through tears and saw a ship descending from the sky. Ambassador Kale had arrived. The ancient dragon landed in the street outside, his massive form crushing abandoned enforcement vehicles. His scales were midnight black, decorated with patterns that looked like galaxies. He was enormous, easily 10 times Lyra's size. When he spoke, his voice carried across the entire city. "I felt her shield from orbit. She saved so many of you. Let me save her." Kale pushed through the building's walls as if they were paper. He moved with surprising gentleness for something so large, stopping beside Lyra's fallen form. His ancient eyes met Owen's. "The bond you share with my daughter is sacred, but she is dying and I cannot save her alone. I need you, Owen Harper. I need all of you." "What do you mean?" Owen asked, his voice breaking. "There is a dragon healing ritual. It requires willing participants who will share their energy, their emotions, their life force through the bond. One participant is not enough, but many together might save her." Kale looked at the camera still broadcasting everything. "People of Meridian 7, my daughter sacrificed herself to protect you. Will you help me save her?" The response was immediate. Hundreds of voices outside shouting, "Yes." Citizens rushing forward, pressing closer to the building. Officer Reed grabbing Owen's hand. David Grant placing his palm on Lyra's scales. Kale began the ritual, his voice creating harmonics that resonated in everyone's chest. He guided them through it. Think of moments when you felt alive. Remember people you cared about. Feel everything you have been forbidden to feel. Owen closed his eyes and opened his heart completely. He thought about the moment Lyra hatched. Her first chirp. The way she looked at him with trust. Every moment of joy, fear, love, and hope they had shared. Around him, others did the same. Officer Reed thought about her sister, lost years ago to reconditioning. David Grant remembered his mother's embrace before the laws changed. Ruth thought about her brother David, about the love he had been punished for. One by one, every person present contributed their emotions to the ritual. The energy built, visible as a golden light that surrounded Lyra's body. It grew brighter as more people outside added their own feelings, their own memories, their own awakening hearts. The empathic energy that Lyra had projected outward now flowed back to her, magnified by thousands of people choosing to feel. Owen watched, holding his breath, as color began returning to Lyra's scales. Her breathing strengthened. Through their bond, he felt her life force stabilizing, growing stronger. Then her eyes opened. Those beautiful amber eyes found his immediately. Through their renewed connection, Owen felt her surprise, her joy, her love flooding back at full strength. She stood slowly, shaking herself like she was waking from deep sleep. Then she pressed her head against Owen's chest and he wrapped his arms around her neck, sobbing with relief. The ritual had worked. Lyra was alive, more than alive. She was stronger than before, the bond between her and Owen now reinforced by the energy of thousands. Ambassador Kale rumbled with approval. She is healed, and you people of Meridian 7 have done something remarkable. You felt together. You saved a life together. This is what bonds can achieve. Chairman Cross's voice cut through the moment. This proves nothing. They are all compromised now. We must initiate full reconditioning protocols. But Dr. Wright stepped in front of him, physically blocking his access to the controls. No more, Victor. Look at what just happened. Thousands of people came together to save a life. That is not weakness. That is strength we have denied ourselves for too long. The council chamber erupted again. More members sided with Wright. Cross found himself suddenly alone in his convictions. I am removing you from chairmanship, Wright announced. Effective immediately. The prohibition laws will be suspended pending full review. Citizens will have the choice whether to continue their clarity treatments. Cross raged, but he was powerless. The council's own members had turned against him. Outside, the enforcement teams that had been trying to break through the citizen blockade lowered their weapons. Some embraced the people they had been fighting moments before. The divide was healing, slowly but surely. Owen stood with Lyra, surrounded by people who had helped save her. Reed, David, Ruth, dozens of others. They were all crying, all smiling, all feeling emotions they had been told their whole lives were dangerous. Ambassador Kale addressed the crowd directly. I came to retrieve my daughter, but I see now that she has found something precious here, a bond with a human that exemplifies the best of both our species. If you are willing, Owen Harper, I would offer you a position as the first human ambassador to the Draconid Empire. Owen looked at Lyra. Through their bond, they shared the decision instantly. Yes, together, always together. I accept, Owen said. But I have one condition. I return regularly to help the people here learn to reconnect with their emotions, to teach them that bonds are not to be feared. Kale inclined his massive head in agreement. A wise request. You will establish the foundation for human-dragon partnerships. Others will follow your path. The days that followed were transformative. The prohibition laws were officially repealed. Clarity treatments became optional rather than mandatory. Citizens began the difficult process of relearning how to feel, how to connect, how to live with emotions after decades of suppression. It was not easy. Some people struggled with the sudden influx of feelings. Others could not adapt and chose to continue their treatments. But most began to rediscover joy, love, friendship, and all the complex emotions that made life meaningful. Ruth was released from the watch list and cleared of all charges. She became the director of the First Bond Foundation, an organization Owen established to help people process their emotional awakening safely. Officer Reed resigned from enforcement and retrained as a counselor. She dedicated her life to helping others who had lost loved ones to the old laws. David Grant became one of the first humans to successfully bond with a young dragon, pioneering the partnership program that would eventually spread across human space. Chairman Cross was removed from all positions of authority. He spent his remaining years bitter and alone, unable to accept that the world he had built was fundamentally wrong. Dr. Helen Wright led the Reformed Council, guiding Meridian 7 through its transformation with wisdom and compassion. She publicly apologized for her role in enforcing the prohibition laws and worked tirelessly to make amends. Owen and Lyra spent the next year traveling between Meridian 7 and the Draconid Empire. They taught humans about dragon culture, and dragons about human potential. They demonstrated that bonds between species were not just possible, but beneficial for everyone involved. More dragons came to human space. More humans learned to form connections with them. The partnerships were not always easy. Bonds required work, understanding, compromise. But they were real, and they made both species stronger. 3 years after Owen first found Lyra's pod, he stood in the rebuilt center of Meridian 7. The city had transformed. Gray buildings now featured colorful murals. Parks replaced sterile plazas. Laughter echoed where silence once reigned. Lyra rested beside him, now fully mature and magnificent. Her scales gleamed in the sunlight. Her wings, when fully extended, cast shadows across entire city blocks. But when she looked at Owen, she was still the small hatchling who had chirped and nuzzled against his hand. A young child approached, maybe 7 years old, holding her mother's hand. She looked up at Owen with wide, curious eyes. "Mr. Harper, is it true you were once a criminal?" Owen knelt to her level, smiling gently. "I broke laws that should never have existed. Sometimes the most criminal thing you can do is refuse to feel, And sometimes the most legendary thing you can do is simply love. "Can I meet a dragon someday?" the child asked. "Can I have a bond like yours?" Owen glanced at Lyra, who rumbled with amusement. "If a dragon chooses you and you choose them, then yes. That is the new way. That is the better way. But remember, bonds are not easy. They require courage, commitment, and caring even when it is difficult." "I can do that," the child said with absolute certainty. "I want to feel everything." Her mother, who was old enough to remember the prohibition laws, had tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said to Owen quietly. "Thank you for giving us back our humanity." Owen stood and looked out over the city. He could see humans and dragons walking together. Young people training to form their own bonds. Former enforcement officers now teaching emotional literacy courses. Citizens holding hands, embracing, expressing joy and sadness and everything in between. It was messy, complicated, sometimes painful, but it was alive. Lyra pressed her head against his chest, directly over his heart. Through their bond, which had only grown stronger with time, Owen felt her contentment, her pride in what they had accomplished together, her absolute love for him. And Owen Harper, former mechanic and current legend, placed his hand on her scales and felt peace. He had broken the law. He had become a criminal. He had risked everything to protect a dragon he had found in a crashed ship. And in doing so, he had changed the world, not through violence or conquest, not through technology or force, but through the simple act of caring about someone other than himself. The prohibition laws were gone. Humanity was learning to feel again. And across the galaxy, people told the story of the mechanic who dared to love when love was forbidden. They called him a criminal. They called him a legend. But Owen Harper knew the truth. He was just someone who had discovered what mattered most. Someone who chose connection over emptiness. Someone who proved that bonds do not weaken us. They make us human. Years later, historians would study this period. They would analyze the fall of the prohibition laws, the rise of human-dragon partnerships, the transformation of entire societies. But the real story was simpler than any academic analysis. A lonely mechanic found a lost dragon. They formed a bond that should have been impossible. And together, they reminded humanity of something it had almost forgotten. Love is not weakness. Love is everything. And that truth, once awakened, could never be suppressed again. Owen looked down at the city one more time, then up at Lyra. Ready to go home? Through their bond, she asked which home he meant. The Draconid Empire where she was born? Meridian 7 where they had fought for change? The ship that now served as their base? Owen smiled. Does it matter? Home is wherever we are together. Lyra rumbled in perfect agreement. They spread their wings, Owen secured in a harness specifically designed for human dragon flight, and launched into the sky. Below them, the city of Meridian 7 continued its transformation. Above them, stars beckoned with infinite possibilities. And between them, the bond held strong. The mechanic and the dragon. The criminal and the legend. The proof that humanity's greatest strength had never been rationality or efficiency or emotionless logic. It had always been the courage to care. And now, finally, humanity was remembering how to use it.